Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. Glad to have you with me today. And today I do have a very special guest. He is Jed Schaefer, and he is the host of the First Gen Gamers podcast. Jed, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Happy to have you with me today. And Jed actually has a couple different specialties, one of which is gaming. Of course, he's also a big wrestling fan, and we're going to be talking about some wrestling tonight. Uh, Jed, before we dive into things here, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I'm old. My kids probably wouldn't. They're like, "No, you're not old." I'm 47. I'm close to
No,
50.
that's not old.
Yeah, I feel old. I've been, for the relevant to the topic at hand. I've been watching wrestling since the first match I can think of watching was Hogan defending the WWF title against Paul Orndorff in the steel cage. The match that ends with both of them jumping off the opposite sides of the cage at the same time and landing at the same time, and they went to like the they did like an instant replay and they slowed it down to see who landed first. So yeah, I've been watching. God, what's that? Almost 40 years ago. Um, love wrestling. Used to write about wrestling. I was a writer on WrestleCrap for 10 years. Um, got three kids, all boys, married 21 years.
Are the kids wrestling fans too?
Uh, the youngest one will sit down and watch it more with me. The older ones have watched a few matches here and there, but they could take it or leave it. But the younger one was like when I bought this year's WWE 2K game, it came with a free subscription to Peacock. So I was like, okay, I'm going to hold on to I'm not going to redeem it until the week of WrestleMania, and then we'll sit down and watch it. And my littles was like, we get to watch WrestleMania both nights. Yes, you can watch both nights.
Jed, you mentioned doing some writing for WrestleCrap. Would you like to explain to everybody what the WrestleCrap website is all about?
Sure. So WrestleCrap's been around since the start of the millennium, like 299, 2000, somewhere around there. Uh, the primary focus of WrestleCrap is celebrating. It's a comedy website, so it's the worst of wrestling, and it celebrates the bad gimmicks, the bad matches, the bad angles. Just in it lightly pokes fun at them. It isn't like snarky and cruel or anything. It's just like we watched this thing that once had a wrestling plumber, and we watched this thing that once had Roman Reigns battling Baron Corbin over dog food. Just kind of poking fun at it, and thereby poking fun at ourselves. Just kind of having a good time about it.
Yeah. Was there a particular topic that your column focused on?
So my column was a bit different. RD recruited me off of the guy who runs it, RD Reynolds, recruited me off of a different website, and I wrote a column called "Rewriting the Book." Where did you ever read comics?
I read comics a little bit, yeah.
Okay, do you remember the old Marvel series What If?
I don't.
Okay, so What If was basically alternate history, different timelines. So like, what if Gwen Stacy didn't die when Spider-Man tried to save her, or what if Captain America? What if Steve Rogers didn't take the super serum and it was given to Peggy Carter? Stuff like that.
Okay.
So rewriting the book was that. It was exploring possible other timelines if something different happened. Like, what if Vince McMahon didn't call for the bell in Montreal at Survivor Series 97? What if CM Punk did leave ROH with the ROH World title and took it to WWE? What if Rikishi wasn't the person who ran over Stone Cold? Stuff like that. So it was taking a moment and turning left instead of right, and seeing where it went.
Are there any WrestleCrap moments that stand out as like being particular favorites of yours?
Oh, um, that's tricky because
I think
because
that's a lot to think about.
the tricky part is that WrestleCrap by extension, like if we're putting my column to the side and just looking at WrestleCrap, it's bad. So it's like finding the bad thing is that you can still enjoy is kind of tricky. Um, yeah, I will probably get nailed at the cross for this. I don't think that Jeff Jarrett's original gimmick in WWE was WrestleCrap. The country singer, he was obnoxious, he was abrasive, he was tiresome and self aggrandizing. I thought it worked. I thought he was a great heel. So, off the top of my head, that's probably the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, I would agree with you. Are there people that consider that to be WrestleCrap?
RD does. The
Oh,
guy who
okay.
runs it. His logic is who in their right mind would try to break into singing into the country music scene by way of becoming a professional wrestler. So
Uh,
yeah, I could follow that train of thought, but I just think that the gimmick worked. Like, despite that leap of logic, I think the gimmick worked anyway.
yeah. Yeah, I guess when I think of WrestleCrap, I think of things that um like that didn't pan out or that were kind of like ended up being a joke, like the Shockmaster or stuff like that. It's
The one the one that always comes to mind for me for things like that, angles that didn't pan out, the higher power.
oh man.
There were so many possibilities for the higher power. I know, we've all heard by now what the original plan was, which was Christopher Daniels, but even if they didn't go with that, they could have gone with so many other options, and instead, it was me, Austin. It's just,
Man, I remember watching that as a kid and just being like hugely disappointed because like the Undertaker for me, I that was my favorite Undertaker gimmick that he's had, like the dark side. And I mean just the build up to that, it's like, wow, who could be greater than the Undertaker? Like who could the Undertaker be looking up to that's more powerful than him? And then it turns out to be Vince. And it's like, wow, that was a letdown.
yeah, I remember watching that. I can still hear Jim Ross's call in my head where I can't remember his exact words. It's like GD or something like that. It's something, it's a light profanity, but he's like, you can hear in his voice because JR has always said he never wanted to know what the script was so he could call it naturally. And maybe it's just projection, but I swear to God that I hear something in his voice that sounds like he's going, "Oh, come on, really?"
Yeah, that was a big letdown. I mean, I guess from a storyline perspective, you could say it kind of makes sense because Vince would always be looking for a way to screw over Austin. And I mean, he had his own daughter kidnapped, and so Austin never probably saw it coming, but still, just for the fans, I think that was a big disappointment overall.
Yeah,
Um, and then they did uh, the ministry and the corporation merger, which was kind of
yeah. That it both the corporation and the ministry just lost for me. It lost a lot of gas when they came together because it was one, the two things didn't fit together, and two, it got too big, and there were already enough people in both of them that didn't really matter, like Viscera and Midian, and over on the corporation, Boss Man, Test, Ken Shamrock, all of them had just kind of been, eh, you know, floating around. And let's mash them all together in a bigger group. Surely that will raise all their profiles. No, it
no.
didn't.
I was uh I was reading, I think it was earlier today actually, people talking about how the Undertaker had a bad gimmick, but because of like who he was and how he portrayed it, he made it work. And I mean, if you think about it, like he was what like an evil mortician or an Undertaker, I guess, is what he was. But but I mean, he really hit the ball out of the park with that and made it work in an era where we saw a lot of I guess like everyday jobs being turned into wrestling gimmicks, plumbers and garbage men. The Undertaker really made his work and turned out to be one of the greatest gimmicks of all time.
His commitment to it, I think, was a large part of it, and the little touches that helped make it just a little bit more than just being an Undertaker. Like I remember, I don't know, remember if it was a interview with him or if it was an interview with Bruce Pritchard. Um, but someone talked about how they were, they wanted to build different elements of it behind the scenes, and one of them was the sit up that he would do. That was taken from Halloween, from the scene. Well, it's really towards the end where after Jamie Lee Curtis stabs Michael Myers in the eye with the coat hanger, and he's laying there and he's down, and the camera's like right on Jamie Lee, and the background is out of focus, but you can still see it, and you all of a sudden see Michael in the back sit up, and it's just this oh god moment, and they took that and were like, let's use that because that is so horror and so chilling. It's like little things like that that just made the gimmick that much better, you know.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. It's a great shot in the movie too. Uh, as far as like more recent times, what would you consider WrestleCrap?
uh Roman Reigns before 2020. Not his fault. The dude has worked hard. I mean, it was booking, but Roman Reigns pre 2020, post Shield pre 2020 is, um, I hate to say it, also Dean Ambrose post Shield. I love Dean Ambrose. Don't get me wrong. Or John Moxley, I should say. John Moxley, despite the fact that the dude seems to bleed from sneezing, um, seriously, lay off blading, guys. But I like it. He's a great performer. He's fun to watch in the ring. He's got a great personality. He's like part Pillman, part Piper. Um, Great wrestling style, but he was watered down as Dean Ambrose. Like he was talking to a potted plant and he named it Mitch, and he lost because he lost a match once because he yanked on a monitor that was plugged in and it blew up in his face. Like again, it wasn't him. It was he was stuck in all of these angles, but he was stuck in so many bad angles that he came off more like uh, more wacky than crazy.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I remember that when that monitor or whatever blew up in his face, and it's like, what's going on here? That was kind of ridiculous. And another one that stands out for me is I think it was early on in Roman's run with as the champion during his tribal chief era, and that was when he defended against Finn Balor as the Demon, and Finn was on his way to winning when he went to the top rope, and all of a sudden the rope mysteriously broke, I think is what happened,
Mm-hmm.
and he lost the match because of that. And there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was never any kind of explanation for that.
None that I can recall. No,
Yeah, it's just the rope just breaks all of a sudden, and that's that.
and they
Yeah.
destroyed the demon character too. Like between that and I want to say at some point he faced Bray Wyatt as the demon, and like he had two or three losses in a row as the demon, and they just destroyed him. And he's such a great talent, and he should be better than he is. He should be more than what he is, and they just keep finding ways to be like, "You're good, but not that good."
Yeah, that I think the final nail in the coffin for the Demon was it last year's WrestleMania when he lost to Edge as the Demon?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he should have won that match. I was
You and me both.
Yeah,
That was,
and
that was the perfect point to put him over and have Edge right off into the sunset. And instead, no, let's have the hero go over because WrestleMania, yay.
it's not always easy being a wrestling fan, is it?
No, it's it's one of the more frustrating fandoms that one can have sometimes.
Yeah, well, let's switch over to a more positive note.
Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite wrestlers of all time?
Oh, top three easily. Uh, Undertaker, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels.
Oh,
I
interesting.
um, each one a little bit different. Undertaker's like pure sports entertainment, pure it's just goofy. It's whether I mean it's not funny goofy, but more like whether he was the zombie mortician in the early 1990s or the satanic prince of darkness in the attitude era or the dead man. um it he just tapped into that little kid in me of, you know, no matter what they did, the Undertaker was always the Undertaker. There was never a moment of breaking character. It was always real. So that always made me just feel a little. It was the last little bit of tie I had to being a kid and believing in, in what I was watching. Um, Shawn, the crazy athleticism, the charisma, the showmanship, puts on a great match too. Like honestly, if I were to sit down and list my top 10 matches, every one of them would have one of Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and
Hmm.
probably facing each other on several occasions. Um, and Bret in ring, the dude was the ultimate science, like the ultimate mechanic, the ultimate. The dude was a technician, and it was a throwback to that fighting champion kind of take on all comers. You know, the pro I get he's proud of being a fighting champion. So I love for each one is a little bit different, and I could never rank them. They're all just they're 1A, 1B, 1C.
Ted, so it's been about 25, 26, 27 years, something like that, since the Montreal Screwjob incident. And since then, I feel like everybody and their mother has weighed in on it and given their thoughts and opinions on it. Do you have any interest in talking a little bit about it?
I don't know what new I could say about it.
Well, first of all, for maybe if there's any new wrestling fans who listen to us, would you like to explain what was the Montreal Screwjob?
Sure. I will try to give the most basic version of it that I can.
Yeah.
Um, Bret Hart was WWF champion. This was 1997, the fall of. He had signed a major contract to WWF, and it turned out that business was not doing so good. They couldn't afford him anymore. So Vince McMahon gave him the opportunity to get out of his contract and go to the competition at the time, WCW. And Vince asked him to drop the championship, lose to Shawn Michaels on the way out at Survivor Series. Bret and Shawn had real backstage animosity for a variety of reasons that would take a 12-volume podcast to cover. But the bottom line was Bret said he didn't want to lose to Shawn, and he had a contract clause that said that he could have reasonable creative control. So he exercised that, and Vince McMahon decided that he would just do an end around, and he during a sequence where Shawn Michaels had Bret Hart in a submission move, Bret's own submission move that he used to finish matches. Vince McMahon had the referee call for the bell, thereby Shawn, quote unquote, winning the match and the title changing hands despite Bret not actually quitting.
Do you remember that as a fan, like watching it happen?
Yep,
How
remember
did you
watching
feel?
confused. I had two buddies over at the time. It was tradition every month. Buddies came over. We got every WCW pay per view and every WWF pay per view. So this was we got Survivor Series. We watched it with my parents because my parents are wrestling fans too. It finishes. We go outside. They were smokers, so they go outside to smoke a cigarette, and I go outside and we're chatting away with them, and we're like, "What did we just see? Did he tap?" So now then we're trying to rely on memory, going, "Okay, did we see his hand tap at all? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't." But we were just trying to replay it in our head and trying to talk it out. We it didn't make any sense, and the next few weeks didn't help it make any sense either. The more information we got, the more questions we got.
Yeah, it was a very weird situation. And one of the things that I've always heard was that so about a year before that incident, Alundra Blaze, who was the WWF Women's Champion at the time, jumped ship to WCW, and on live TV, she trashed the WWF belt. And I've heard that Vince was afraid that Brett would do the same thing. But like I don't know Brett personally, but from what I do know of him, that would it seems like that would be very out of character for him to do that. Like I Brett seems like a classy guy, so I can't picture him doing that.
I've heard that too, and I've always chalked that up to Vince rationalizing the situation. I've never believed that Brett would do that. I mean, Brett, from every other person who has told the story, their side of it, Brett has said, and he's got multiple people to corroborate it, that he offered different scenarios. I will lose it as a house show here. I will drop it on Raw the next night. I will wait until the next pay per view and drop it there to Ken Shamrock. I will. How about all of these alternate scenarios? So if he was willing to do any of those other scenarios, push out his contract with the competition just to drop the belt, even, I have a hard time believing that someone who was looking for a way to drop it in a more reasonable manner would walk away with the belt and do what Alundra Blaze did.
Yeah, yeah. But that was a long time ago, and I'm glad that since then Brett and Shawn have mended the fences between themselves. So that makes me happy. Um, All-time favorite match?
Shawn Michaels Undertaker WrestleMania 26.
Okay, you answered that pretty easily.
Yeah, not a hesitation at all. Uh it's the emotion of that match. It's the tie. It's the streak versus career. It's the built-up history. It's every little element. Shawn expending every last trick and knowing at the end he doesn't have any bullets left. He doesn't have any tricks to pull. He doesn't want to go down, but if he's going to go down, he's going to make the Undertaker more or less kill him. And it's a beautifully told story.
Yeah, that's um actually that's a match that I don't believe I've ever seen yet. Um like there's a lot of older pay-per-views that I haven't watched. Uh but that's something I definitely need to work on remedying because I know I'm missing out on a lot of good stuff. Um how did you feel about the Undertaker streak ending against Brock?
Uh not the right guy. Not the right guy. I
Yeah.
uh I didn't. Yeah, just not the right guy. Like, Brock didn't need that. I get what they were going for. They kind of screwed up bringing back Brock Lesnar. They had him lose to Cena, and then they had that terrible feud with Triple H. Um, I get that this was like a rehab job, and they wanted to build him back up, but he didn't need to be that. He was Brock Lesnar. He was former UFC heavyweight champion. Just put him in a match and have him chew someone up and quote unquote break their arm, and just have him be a monster, and he will get over just fine. Ending the streak should have been given to someone who was a full timer, who you were ready to make. You were ready to turn into the next big thing.
I
if I was in charge, he would have held on to that streak for 2 more years. He would have no, what? Not even 2 more years. It was the next year. The next year was Bray Wyatt. I would have had him lose it there.
yeah, I agree with you 100%. Just didn't make sense to have him lose to a part-timer like Brock. Just would you consider that WrestleCrap? Brock ending the streak?
Uh, no, not no. Not WrestleCrap to me is more really not just a bad idea, but just a completely just something terrible. Like I don't think Brock beating him was terrible. It just wasn't the best idea. I
Definitely
mean
agree with that.
the match wasn't good because because Undertaker got the concussion early on, and then the whole
Right,
match just deteriorated. But
right. Do you like to watch any wrestling other than WWE?
I used to follow a lot of the indies, or back when the indie circuit was huge, like ROH and Chikara and PWG. I keep an ear out for stuff that's happening like in TNA and AEW. I would watch TNA if I had the access to it. Um, we're a streaming family in TNA. I don't even know if they're on a streaming service. I think they have their own, but I'm not paying for that. Um, I have watched AEW 3 or 4 times. They have a great talent roster. It might be the best top to bottom talent roster on the planet. It just isn't presented very well. I can't get into the product, and I don't know why, but just something about it. I feel a disconnect from it when I watch it. It just feels like um, it feels like a performance.
Uh, I I really wish AEW well because back in the late 90s, I think WWE was at its best when they had that competition from WCW.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know how things kind of started to slide downhill a little bit once WCW went out of business.
Yep.
And really, I feel like just in the last few years or so, feel like WWE is starting to rebound a little bit. And I know business is going pretty well for them right now. I just hope that they don't kind of run away with things and try to bury AEW because we need that competition.
Oh yeah, there should always be a hot number two. You know, it does. They don't need to be neck and neck, but nipping at the heels. They should at least be nipping at the heels. I mean, if they are neck and neck, hey, fine, cool, great. Um, but WWE needs to be kept on their toes.
Yes. Yes. And um, WWE, they don't always make it easy to root for them. I feel like there's a lot of shenanigans that go on over there that don't always sit well with me. Would you feel the same way?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I mean, the Janelle Grant situation. We won't go into details there, but when that blew up, that was only what 2 months before 2K24 came out, and it. I sat there for 2 months going, "Can I buy this game? Can I make that leap? Am I crossing an ethical line? Am I supporting a company that supported Vince McMahon and what happened in there? And like, can I do that?" I ended up going thinking, as much as this may be supporting the company is not just the one man; it's also all the workers. So by buying this game, I more feel like I'm supporting Braun Breaker and Tegan Knox and Rhea Ripley and Sami Zayn and Nate, all the wrestlers on Raw and SmackDown and NXT. I'm supporting them because I'm playing as them. I'm not buying this to support a company. I'm buying this to support the men and women that are the reason why the company exists. So, is that mental gymnastics? that's up to you. But I don't like having to do that. But if I'm going to keep watching, that's how I sleep at night. No, staying a fan of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I feel too. And I think I speak for the vast majority of wrestling fans when I say, thank God Vince is gone.
Yeah. Happy
Uh,
moment indeed. Good.
yeah, and it's crazy because he kept trying to come back too, but I think he's finally gone for good now, especially with the merger with the UFC company. I don't think they're going to let him get a foot back in the door, hopefully. So I think we can breathe a little bit easier there.
Yep. I mean, he's sold literally all of his stock now too. So he has no way in without someone letting him in. And I can't see Triple H doing that now that he's in charge. I can't see Nick Khan doing that. I certainly can't see TKO's board of directors doing that. I think they are well and truly happy with him in the rearview mirror.
Yep, definitely. Jed, you mentioned Undertaker, Brett, and Shawn, your all-time favorite wrestlers. How about on the female side of things?
Uh Rhea Ripley is definitely my number one right now. I adore Rhea Ripley. I love her personality. I love she she's got this physically intense style. She's visually distinctive from all the other women. Um, and we're miles away from the divas era in the swimsuit models pretending to be wrestlers. But she
Thankfully.
is, thankfully, yes, but she is still visually so distinct, taller and broader, and has that punk goth look to her. I just absolutely adore her. Love Alexa Bliss for the complete opposite reason of Rhea. Like she's just this tiny, snotty brat that acts about 5 feet taller than she really is, and I absolutely love when when a Chihuahua thinks that they're a Rottweiler. It's just I love it. Uh, and Trish is Trish is classic. Trish is a legend.
Yeah, and you know, especially coming from an era where the women didn't always get, the same amount of respect that guys did. Uh, Trish was one of the talented women on the roster at that time. And I was happy when she had that main event moment with Lita on Monday Night Raw. That was a groundbreaking moment for women. And um, she's been back as recently as last year too, and she still looked in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
So that was definitely cool to see. Um, for me, I've always enjoyed Bailey, especially when she had the hugger gimmick in NXT. Uh, Bailey versus Sasha at NXT Brooklyn, that's probably my top women's match in WWE. I thought that was pretty amazing. Um, Also a big fan of Asuka. She always has great work too.
mm-hmm. Both of those are really very talented. Not just talented women, talented wrestlers. Period. They're just
Absolutely.
across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I say that Bailey versus Sasha was, my favorite women's match in WWE, but really it ranks right up there with any of the men's matches too, as far as my favorites. Um, that was just a classic for me. But Jed, uh, we're running out of time here, and I'd like to just mention that you have your podcast again, First Gen Gamers. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So me and my co-host Ashley, we pick a topic every episode, and we debate the best nominees for that topic. So I'll have a pick, and she'll have a pick, but we go console generation by console generation. So we start off like with the Atari, and then we move that generation of consoles, and we move on to the Nintendo and the Sega Master System, and so on and so forth. And so we pick one example per topic, or one example per console generation. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a celebration of gaming history.
Okay, cool. And I will put uh, a link to that podcast in the description for this episode so people can check that out. And in case anybody is wondering, Well, if Jed has a gaming podcast, why are you guys talking about wrestling? That's because I hope to have Jed back on the show so we can do a gaming episode. But for now, we're just going to chat about wrestling. And this episode has really flown by. Jed, I'd like to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Look
All
forward to
right.
coming back.
Awesome. I'd like to thank all you guys for joining us. And if you'd like to learn more about the podcast, you can look for a happy moment on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.